country, so under the O Scotland, my mother, and welcome the day when again I shall brush the bright dew from the brae, and, light as a bird, give my foot to the heather, my hand to the staff, and my face to the weather. Then climb to the peak where the ptarmigan flies, or stand by the linn where the salmon will rise, and vow nevermore with blind venture to roam from the strong land that bore me, my own Scottish home. Namaste, it's a beautiful day, and welcome. We are gathered here in this hall as all the coastal cave nightclubs were closed and Alistair had the key. So sorry, Rory, I hope this will suffice now that you are somewhere where you know where it's all about. Death is life's greatest mystery. What happens when our soul leaves our body is the most important question in the world. The answer will affect how we live our lives. The world is plagued with the question of what comes after this. David Attenborough quote number 1. In moments of great grief, that's where you look and immerse yourself. You realize you are not immortal. You are not God. You are part of the natural world, and you come to accept that. This ceremony is an opportunity to celebrate Rory's life now that he has moved on to his next great adventure. The love and joy at having the pleasure of him in your lives, and also a time to acknowledge one of the most difficult experiences in life, which is that of being parted from someone who we love and respect. In this time, you may find sadness sitting along immense feelings of appreciation and gratitude for having known Rory. Everyone's grief is unique, and each of you will find your own way to find peace again in your lives. It is important to be gentle and compassionate with yourselves, to know that whatever emotions or feelings arise, it stems from your love of him. The love and friendship you shared with him will remain with you always. Whatever sadness you must experience at this time, may it move through you gently and with grace, and may you feel the peace that is present within you always, beyond the stories and memories, beyond the pain and suffering. May you call upon your family and your friends, and the support that is within the community that surrounds you all. We all know that Rory's had a colourful life, and this colour was made up of difficult times as well. He was human, like everyone else here, and made mistakes that caused him a great deal of sadness, losses that stayed with him throughout his life, like the loss of his dear daughter, Iona. Today, though, we will not focus on those difficult times, but more on the positive aspects of his life and personality. And for a moment now, let us listen to Shona as she sings, Dear Lord and Father of Mankind.
Dear Lord and Father of mankind, forgive our foolish ways. Reclothe us in our rightful mind, in pure lives thy service find, in deeper reverence praise, in deeper reverence praise. In simple trust like theirs who heard beside the Syrian sea, the gracious calling of the Lord, let us like them without a word rise up and follow thee. Rise up and follow thee. O Sabbath rest by Galilee, O calm of hills above, Jesus knelt to share with thee the silence of eternity, interpreted by love, interpreted by love. Drop thy still dews of quietness till all our striving cease. Take from our souls the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives confess the beauty of thy peace, the beauty of thy peace. Breathe through the heats of our desire thy coolness and thy balm. Let sense be dumb, let flesh retire, speak through the earthquake, wind and fire, O still small voice of calm, O still small voice of calm.
Thank you, Shona. Ruaraidh had an interesting relationship with religion and questioned its validity a lot. He was a spiritual man. However, there will be very little religious content in this service, but in a moment we will say a prayer and allow this time to ground you in your faith, in your belief. David Attenborough, quote number 2. The whole of life is coming to terms with yourself and the natural world. Why are you here? How do you fit in? What's it all about? So now, if you would like to join me in prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Ruaraidh lit up your lives, and now where there is darkness, let the radiance he touched you with shine out. He offered you all his warmth and friendship, unconditional care and love, and many exciting adventures and challenges along the journey. I would now like to invite Harry and then Sophie up to read.
This is the prayer of St. Brendan the Navigator. Help me to journey beyond the familiar and into the unknown. Give me the faith to leave old ways and break fresh ground with you. Christ of the mysteries, I trust you to be stronger than each storm within me. I will trust in the darkness and know that my times, even now, are in your hand. Tune my spirit to the music of heaven, and somehow make my obedience count for you. Amen.
The ship. What is dying? I'm standing on the seashore. A ship sails in the morning breeze and starts for the ocean. She is an object of beauty, and I stand watching her till at last she fades on the horizon, and someone at my side says, she is gone. Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. She is just as large as the masts, hull and spars as she was when I saw her, and just as able to bear her load of living freight to its destination. The diminished size and total loss of sight is in me, not in her. And just at the moment when someone at my side says, she is gone, there are others who are watching her coming, and other voices take up a glad shout. There she comes, and that is dying.
Ruaraidh was as much as part of the scenery around here as the sea and the mountains are. David Attenborough, number 3. People must feel that the natural world is important and valuable and beautiful and wonderful and an amazement and a pleasure. I never had the pleasure of meeting Ruaraidh personally, but I would often see him driving his Bentley to and from Portree. Whilst visiting Gilas, Alistair and Duncan last week, which I must say was probably one of the best home visits I've ever done, I was given a copy of his book so I could get an insight into his full, rich adventure called life. And what a read. What a great collection of stories, of memories, and of the changing landscape of Skye. It was such a pleasure to read. However, no amount of insight, no amount of reading can deliver a tribute or a eulogy better than one written and spoken by those who loved and knew him best, you, his family. So I will now invite you up to share your words of your father.
Daddy. Girls were a bit of a puzzle to him, so I think it was rather a surprise to have a daughter first. There was always a great sense of fun and adventure in our home, which we all thought was perfectly normal. But over the years began to realise that sometimes things were not quite like that at our friends' houses. I remember being really embarrassed, aged about 5, when he drove me to the end of the road to meet the lift to school in his pyjamas and was terrified he might get out of the car. Then there was the 3-wheeled car, which had 2 little dicky seats in the back for me and Alistair. You would be driving along quite happily when he would suddenly turn in a circle, round and round and round in the middle of the road, just for fun. We lived in Sussex until I was 6, and then he got bored of working in London, and I remember that he had decided that laundrettes were a good idea, and he opened one in Putney, and then one in Horsham. I clearly remember a famous actress came down to do the formal opening, looking very glamorous, holding a black poodle, which she proceeded to put into the probably cardboard giant washing machine on the pavement outside. She shut the door, probably pressed a button or waved a wand, then opened the door, and out came a white poodle. It bothered me for years what they had done to the poor black poodle to make it white so quickly. Aged 4, it was quite a mystery. As Daddy's most memorable parts of his childhood were being active, often up to no good, here in Skye, on the hill or the sea, in nature in all its rawness, he was determined that his children should learn what he had had. I was taken out in the boat and was sick. I was taken on the hill and always seemed to find the deepest peat hag to fall into. I was taken shooting molehills, but wasn't very accurate. And as for casting on the lawn, that produced terrible fankles. But to his horror, I liked ponies. Bloody horses, he would say. They would come into the house sometimes. One even came in during breakfast and started eating his cereals. Or they might arrive in the sitting room while he was watching TV. He had to take me and my pony to a show once, and he had to load it up into the trailer by himself. So he loaded it, let go, put up the ramp, and went round to tie it up. And it had disappeared. It had gone round the partition and jumped back out again. He never really approved of competition. I disagreed. We did disagree from time to time, which led to some epic eruptions, but then all was soon forgiven and forgotten. He was the instigator of endless fun while trying to keep the family fed, which I know was not easy at times. I think we had something like 29 nannies. The last one left when I was about 8. I can't think why. Skiing parties were a regular feature. The more people we could get to come, the more free places we could get. He was always a very distinct figure on the slopes in his Norwegian jersey and +4s, upright, determined and fast, in pursuit of our mother, elegant veteran of 2 Winter Olympic Games. We frequently had parties at Christmas, and our mother always made us do a few silly skits and plays first to break the ice. And he was always made to participate, which he said he hated, but he did comply. The most memorable being the dance of the sugar plump fairy, when he arranged, very dangerously, to fly from a rope, dressed in a petticoat, with long hair, gym shoes and a wand, and his hairy legs and chest very visible. It all started with me and my half-aunt Sally pretending to be ballerinas rather badly, when there was a crash and in he flew backwards. We were meant to close the curtains after 3 or 4 swings and give him a chair to get down, but everyone was laughing so much that we couldn't do anything, and there were great cries of, "Get me down from this bloody thing," as his belt got tighter and tighter, never to be forgotten by those who were there. The death, aged 10, of our little sister Iona was utterly devastating for him, as it was for us all, and left a very deep and lasting scar. It is hard to believe that she would have been 60 this year. People were always important, and who they were or where they came from was irrelevant, and he was equally happy with a duke or a dustman. So long as there was a glint in the eye and a sense of humour, that was what counted. But standards had to be kept up too. He was a stickler for punctuality, which is a trait that not all of his children find easy to follow. His 45 years as secretary of the Skye Gathering was something of which he was very proud, and he strove and succeeded to make sure that it remained the best of parties, with the most fun and the highest standards. He always wanted us to have a family band, even offering us £100 to do it. I was very keen and learned the accordion. Alistair tried every instrument in the Gordonston music department and does play the drums for the extras now. And Duncan could play a mean 100 pipers on the fiddle. But sadly, we never got our act together, nor got the £100. I did continue to have great fun with my squeeze box. He could never understand if we were getting up a scratch band to play the extra at the balls that we might need to practice, and expected it to just happen, if only. I spent a lovely and largely peaceful January this year at Skirnish with him and Phil, his devoted and amazing carer, who has seen him through this extraordinary year. It was fantastic weather, and I was able to report to him sightings of otters, eagles, foxes, peewits, snipe, snow on the hills, sunrises and sunsets, and he always loved hearing what I had seen that day. He never lost that passion for the outdoors, and Skye in particular, and he was so lucky to be on the ball and interested in what everyone was doing right to the very end, when he just went to sleep. He was so well looked after by a fantastic team of doctors, nurses and carers, for which we are eternally grateful, but in particular Phil, who has spent the majority of the past year locked down with him. What a relationship they had. Thank you.
Daddy, I suppose breakfast will never be the same again without you. All our lives, you could set your clock by breakfast. He would come down on time, and almost inevitably would come out the words, "I was just thinking in my bath this morning." And out would come a new scheme. And he had a myriad of schemes, some of which came to fruition, and others were just jolly good fun. I remember one particular one when Ruaraidh House came up for sale, and he said, "We must buy it. It's a perfect place for us all to go, but we must think of a suitable way of making some money out of it." And so it was devised that we will start a sporran farm. And this required a lot of research into identifying the sex of a sporran, at what time they come in season, and which sporrans would be suitable for breeding. And you could imagine the hilarity as the conversation went on, enjoyed by everybody, and his beaming twinkle right throughout, loving and absorbing all the absurdity that it brought out. And another time when he came down and he said, "I've just discovered that the Americans," a nation which actually received quite a lot of lambasting from him, but individuals, of course, he loved. But he came down with this information that the Americans had genetically modified a chicken so that it had no feathers. And this had an advantage when it came to killing the chicken, because of course it didn't need to be plucked. And spotting the opportunity, he said, "What we must do is knit some pullovers for the chickens. And this could be another way of making a million." Such fun. Everything we did had to have that angle of fun and laughter. And yet, it all had to be done properly. He knew how to surround himself with very capable people, as he was himself a very capable person. I think we only have to look back to his beginning in Skye, when at the age of 12, he was allowed to go stalking. And as you probably know the story, he shot not one, not two, not three, but 4 stags in one day. And that kind of must have set in him a standard which survived with him throughout his life. Something was possible and spectacularly achieved. Skye was his breeding ground, where he was hewn from the very landscape. He adored the weather that would come in and beat the hell out of you sometimes. And between Skye House, where he had one grandfather, and the lodge at Edinbane, where he had another, this was the place that he became hefted to all his life. The concept being, Skye was the base, and you must always return to Skye, but you can raid all points of the world in his very splendid manner. And indeed he did. But it was always the people, as Julius has said, in Skye particularly, that brought him back. The people, and he always believed in Skye, that this place has opportunities. And he believed that and expounded his theory throughout his life. He achieved the wind farm with the great help of George Campbell from Edinbane, and the fish farm with Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull fame. And of course, he had a battle with the Forestry Commission, all of which has brought in wealth into the community. And I hope it has left, and I know it has left, a good mark. Of course, the other great thing, the balls, in this very room from the age of 19, when he probably attended his first Skye balls, until he died. There was hardly a year he missed. And the latter 45 years when he was the secretary, following on from my grandfather, who had done it for 50 years, was his pride and joy, and he made a great reputation for himself, retaining the high standards of turnout, discipline, but most of all of fun and the enjoyment that we have all loved. In a way, it's kind of retaining a folklore. He insisted that men should know how to dance and set and swing and do it gracefully, and it's beautiful to be part of. He also took 250 people to St. Petersburg to dance in the Bezborodko Palace in St. Petersburg, which was the most wonderful weekend of Scottish fun. Some years after we'd been, we invited some of the Russians to come back here, and we got a lovely lady from Siberia called Irina Spirina, who some of you might remember. And it happened to be the same year that my father rang me up and he said, "You'll never guess what, but I've just discovered that there's a troupe of Maasai warriors from Kenya who are doing a tour around Scotland, visiting the schools, and they happen to be in Portree." So between us, we said, "Go no further, book 'em." And as we all formed up for the foursome reel in this room, we made an announcement, "Please clear a space, we have some late arrivals," upon which entered a troupe of Maasai warriors dressed in their red, playing a kudu horn, carrying their spears and shields, and it was the most wonderful occasion and enjoyed by everybody there. They did their demonstration and then they participated in the foursome reel which followed. Irina Spirina thought we were up to some sort of devil worshipping and ran from the building. Perhaps his capacity to provide protein really exemplified his life. And I mean by that, he would go out into the sea and he would catch lobsters where nobody else could. He'd come back with the crabs, with the prawns, mackerel, all sorts of whitefish. And this was the way to live. And if that wasn't on the table, then there was venison, endless piles of grouse, pheasants, woodcock, all caught or shot from the land. And it was a lovely sight to see him perched or his glasses perched on the end of his nose in the kitchen, picking away at a lobster. And every last morsel of meat was taken from it. And some of them, of course, provided by Tex and Ian, had kept him in the latter years in good supply. And of course, his final birthday, he enjoyed the most recent discovery of Alaskan crab. So the enthusiasm for food has been well kept in the family, as you can probably see since then. His service in the army, he did his national service in the Scots Guards, made a lot of very good friends, but he sadly just missed the war. Sadly for him, he just missed the war. And I think that was something he greatly wanted to do, was to play his part. After his national service, he returned to work in London and he joined the Special Air Service, number 23 SAS, where he made a lot of very good friends, one of which, Lord Bill Macpherson, died only 2 days before my father. And I think the SAS spirit he carried throughout his life. He wanted us all to learn how to live in a ditch, how to dig snow holes, how to survive off the land, but most of all, how to be a good, loyal friend. And of course, in the SAS, he joined a party which went to do the Haute route in Switzerland between Chamonix and Saas-Fee with Roger Wellesley Smith and Bernard Dew Matthews, who remain great friends of our family. And the mountains provided adventure. One of the great things which he did was we went down to London. We were having lunch with Aunt Mary she was born in Scabest House. And after lunch, he said, one thing I want to do before I die is the Cresta Run. And Aunt Mary, without saying anything, took out a cheque, wrote out a blank cheque, and she slammed it on the table. And she said, Rory, I'm fed up hearing you saying that. You can cash this cheque if you do it tomorrow morning, which that was red rag to a bull. So he went to the wedding that night, off to Zurich, and the following morning he rode the Cresta. He was allowed to go down with hardly any training, and he got the fastest time ever of any man over the age of 50 doing it for the first time. He loved it and the spirit of the people there, the people who touch a little bit of danger, live life flat out. And so he came back and he said two things. Firstly, to Duncan and I, we must get out there and ride the Cresta the following year as a must. And he also said to me, it's a great place in St. Moritz to sell my pictures, and I'm still doing it. So I'm very grateful to him for that. So the mountains, adventure, but always coming back to Skye. And as I stood just yesterday, watching a couple of fighter jets fly at 0 feet above the sea, with the wind in my face, it really resonated, those words, a son of Skye. And that's how we will remember him.
Wail loudly, ye women, your coronet doleful. Lament him, ye pipers. Tread solemn and slow. Mown down like a flower is the chief of Ardgour, and the hearts of the clansmen are weary with woe. In peacetime he ruled like a father among us. Unconquered in fight was the blade that he bore. But the chase was the glory and the pride of his manhood. Strong Donald the hunter, Magillian Moor. Low down by yon burn that's half hidden with heather, he lurked like a lion in the lair he knew well. 'Twas there sobbed the red deer to feel his keen dagger, where pierced by his arrow the caillecock fell. How oft when at e'en he would watch for the wildfowl, like lightning his coracle sped from the shore. But still and for aye as we cross the lone Lochan is Donald the hunter, Magillian Moor. Once more let his war cry resound in the mountains. MacDonald shall hear it in airy Glencoe. Its echo shall float o'er the braes of Lochaber, till Stuarts at Appin that slogan shall know. And borne to the waters beyond the Loch Linney, twixt Morven and Mull where the tide eddies roar, Magillian shall hear it and mourn for their kinsmen, for Donald the hunter, Magillian Moor. Then here let him rest in the lap of Skur Donald, the wind for his watcher, the mist for his shroud, where green and the grey moss will weave their wild tartans, a covering meet for a chieftain so proud. And free as the eagle, these rocks were his eyrie, and free as the eagle his spirit shall soar o'er the crags and the corries that erst knew his footfall, of Donald the hunter, Magillian Moor. We're going to have that again a little bit later, and we're going to sing it, and it'll sound a little bit different. And I gather there may be a few people plugged into this remotely, and the words are going to come up, and we're going to ask because we can't sing this, that everybody who's watching sings it as loudly as they possibly can. Perhaps one of my favorite moments, if favorite is the right word, was aged about 15 when Patrick Shaw Stewart and I were taken by my father to stalk down somewhere on Slate. I can't remember exactly where it was, but he'd planned this expedition. And out we went, and we walked and we walked and we walked. And I was thinking about sex and cars and warm drawing rooms and other things of what I wanted to do, but not where I was. And we shot 2 large beasts at about 4:30, right out in the middle of nowhere, and had to drag them down to the shore, where we'd made a kind of half-hearted arrangement with a local boatman to come and pick us up. And we just got down to the shore, and we saw the boat making its way along the horizon. And we waved, and he didn't seem to see anything, and then he turned around and went back, and we waved a bit more, and then we waved a lot, and then we just saw this one figure finishing off what looked like the end of a bottle of whiskey in the boat, and he went home, and we realized that we were stuck because we'd walked about 8 miles, and we had these 2 beasts. My face fell when my father said, "That's great, we're going to spend the night out here, we're going to shelter in the carcasses, and we're going to eat the livers." And we duly did, and it was a miserable night, and the next morning we had to trudge into Kinloch, where Gog and Claire, I think, had some very rich, important Americans munching a lovely breakfast in their warm drawing room. And we came in smelling and covered in blood and heather. And because one of the things that happened to Grandad when he was born was that all sense of self-consciousness was removed from his DNA entirely. And so he was able to walk in and say, "Could we have a hot bath and some breakfast, please?" I think Skye was the thing that shaped him throughout. That was his true north. He was born in 1926. His parents, his mother, Ruby, the daughter of Duncan MacLeod, the heir of a whiskey fortune, and she had she would bring the warmth of, she was a bit like drinking a glass of whiskey, and she was strong and powerful, and after a while could make you feel very warm and welcome and make you laugh. And his father, who was the most delightful gentleman, kind, considerate, beautiful manners with terrific style. And I think they both must have been very puzzled to have had such a tearaway first eldest child. And I think they didn't really know what to do with him. But he was very shaped by, first of all, going south and being educated in the south. And he would feel very sorry for everybody who had to come from somewhere else and didn't really understand Skye, which for him was the center of the universe. And he was very shaped by the war heroes of the day who were not far away from him in age, and I think he thought that every one of them must have been shaped by the same experiences that he'd had of being out in the wild. And he used to sleep with a rifle under his bed, ready, just in case Hitler had the brainwave that they might invade through Eden Bain, and he'd be there to meet them. And I think from that moment on, he saw his life as a raiding party, and it was to go out into the world and raid and have adventures and come back every now and then with his spoils. And he had all the adventures that we've been talking about through the army, through his business adventures. And when he got married and then had children and then had grandchildren and even great-grandchildren. I think he saw this as being provided with a range of new assistants to help him with his raiding mission. And sometimes they would receive huge bollockings for not falling into line and following the instructions. But nothing gave him greater pleasure than to be fired back at and to see an independent spirit amongst his children and offspring. And a spirit of adventure was really what he was looking for. I suppose I remember as a small child seeing friends of his turning up to Sanka to stay and they would leave their ticking, cooling Jaguars or Arvises or Aston Martins or whatever they might have been, and I would nip out and look inside. And to me, I was so suggestible that I thought that all the dashboards and the switches and the dials were something that meant you needed enormous skill to drive this personal spaceship, and harked back to the Spitfire pilots of the day. And so for me, I used to sneak into the passenger seat of his car wherever he was going, whenever I could, and I'd watch him driving, and I'd imagine that one day I'd have the same sort of level of freedom. But during that time, he used to talk to me, and he used to tell me all about his plans and what he was trying to do and what we were going to do as a family. And I could never understand why we weren't already billionaires and he wasn't already in control of the whole country. But during the process, I think I sort of picked up what he was trying to do, what he was talking about, what he wanted to achieve. And I feel I made quite good friends with him at that time. And since then, he's taken us all on an incredible journey. So I remember when Iona died, it felt that we'd been a family to whom gravity didn't really apply. But after that happened, there was much more of a charade going on. But he always wanted us to make the very best of our situation and wanted us to get on and get out. And he used to give very odd advice sometimes. I mean, I can remember not long after that happened, falling madly in love with somebody, and I was just so hurt when I was roundly rejected. I could hardly walk, and I remember him saying to me, well, this is great. You know, I'm very sorry. It's not a very nice process, but you're on a journey now, and you're about to learn that women are a puzzle. But I think the shaping of the landscape of Skye, I think what he saw and what he tried to pick up and what he believed in was that the landscape creates in people innovation and resilience and imagination and romance and humor. And I think he always felt that created the greatest DNA in people, and that you would find them all over the world, but as soon as they had a connection to here or somewhere like here, they were all right. And I think that if we watched him, you could see, talking to people locally, his assumption was that everybody also would like to be spending the night in a ditch and would be out in a boat if it wasn't for the fact they had to be shopping at the moment, and that we were all on the same adventure, and and that was really what he saw in everybody, I think. But I think for his grandchildren, I think he would say we all, or I would say actually, we have an obligation to him. I think he doesn't want us to necessarily come back to Skye. He wouldn't want us to have a holiday home and come here for once a year for a week and look at the view. But I think he would want us to take the values and the excitement and the DNA that's come from here and to take it out into the world and to really do something with it. So that would be my message to the grandchildren. Yeah. Thank you.
So for my small part, I first heard tell of an extraordinary sage residing on the Isle of Skye from friends of mine, friends of Flora's, but this was many moons ago, before my life's rendezvous with the clan Hilleary started. But just to hear those curious rumours emanating from the island of a very special brand of action man, previously of the Artists' Rifles Special Air Service, a rare merchant of crack, with unfathomable stories of daring do and misadventure in the Western Highlands, Rhodesia and beyond. And so there are obviously so many marvelous stories surrounding such a wonderful man, but we thought that we might be able to offer a slightly alternative picture with a brief description of a day in the life of a flatmate of Ruaraidh Hillary's, bearing in mind he's 94 at this stage. So,
it's not really a typical start to a marriage when you bring your shiny brand new husband and 9-month-old baby to go and live with your grandfather on a far island that neither of them know very much about. But we had a wonderful time, and as Dad said, every morning breakfast would start punctually at 8. Grandad one side of the table, Margot facing him in her high chair, a copy of the West Highland Free Press sharing between them, and a strict breakfast of duck eggs, ham and fried bread, and a long discussion about how good the scrambled eggs were, what we marked them out of 10 today. A long discussion would often follow that, and either Mungo or I would be rushing off to open the hotel to get our guests ready for the day, sneaking backwards out of the door, trying not to seem rude as a conversation about how good larson traps are, or a closed circuit power system for Skye. And then usually one of us would be left with the children and Grandad to sort out some domestic issues, which would quite often go like this. Grandad, we've just seen a very sweet little puppy. Do you mind if it comes to stay? Grandad, we found some new staff. They haven't got anywhere to stay. Would it be okay if they came to stay? Grandad, Alexander's going to come and work for us. Would it be okay if he came to stay? So slowly, Skirnish became a kind of extension of Hame and a wonderful commune that he put up with very well.
Now, the telephone system at Skirnish House, being manned almost entirely by the Major himself, facilitating his global network, and of course with a direct line to Fortnum and Mason's, ever on standby. One would often be summoned to wherever Ruaraidh may have picked up the phone in the house, and that could be in his study or indeed in his bedchambers, where he might sit regarding you with that challenging twinkle so special to him in his eye, naked as the day he was born, while you shift around uneasily, conducting a longer than necessary telephone call with an Indian accountant. There's so many marvelous recollections like that that we picked up from our time at Skirnish, and none more so than just sitting down with Ruaraidh and I, each with a glass, Margot with a bottle, and just settling into a stream of the richest, most bizarre and exciting storytelling I've ever had, I've ever experienced. So I count myself I'm very thankful to count myself amongst those fortunate enough to have shared a dram with Ruaraidh Hilleary.
We were incredibly lucky having Grandad at our fingertips when we moved to Skye. With his prodigious knowledge of the island and its folk, his sharp mind, which could remember a phone number of anyone on the west coast of Scotland, and his unending, enterprising spirit to inspire and motivate us on. We hope, Grandad, that we all in some way can carry on your legacy.
Sunbeams on a scudding sea, waves thundering on the great black rock, a wiry hair on a ruddy nose. A pearl in my muscle, mooshkins, brochs, the land of the fairies. Oysters, lobsters, grouse, famous grouse. Hare, heart, pate. Howling, howling went the gale. The trampoline has blown away. Power cut. Christmas turkey in the belling. Meow, meow. Big bugger, little bugger, big bugger, little bugger, big bugger, little bugger. No helicopters. The young just don't know how to dance. Elegantly. Grishnish, Scabus, Eden Bain, and Tain Lone. The great sky eagle soars. Ah, morning, morning.
I was lucky enough at about the age of 15, I think, to be handed or emailed actually, very much emailed, a list of 12 challenges called the Skye Challenges. These were an embodiment of what Aunt Julius alluded to with his passion for the outdoors, and Uncle Duncan really rounding on the fact that Skye was his true north. And these challenges included things like sailing around the Isle of Skye, using only instruments and charts as your navigation, climbing the Coolin Ridge, meeting a local in the pub and making great friends, getting really pissed with them, and climbing a Coolin the next morning. And he sort of wanted me to do these pretty quickly, and slowly I was sort of doing the Trottenish Ridge, and then I might do the Coolin Ridge. A lot of logistics went into these. He was getting quite sort of persistent that I crack on, and the odd threat would come out that if you don't do this, Hector will have to do this, or Alexander will have to do this. And I was really scratching my head thinking, it's actually quite a lot of logistics to get people up here and, charter a boat and actually go for a week and so on. We have jobs and things like that. But, of course, the threat was growing that one day I might not get the salmon netting rights at Grishnish. But anyway, I think the challenge is still very much there. I suppose we've got to get ticking them off. Heck, Alexander. But looking back, I remember Grandad coming to Greenhill and looking after me at the age of 6, and reading me a chapter from a book called South by Ernest Shackleton. I'm going to read a little extract from a chapter called Rogue Wave. At midnight, I was at the tiller and suddenly noticed a line of clear sky between the south and southwest. I called to the other men that the sky was clearing And then a moment later, I realized that what I had just seen was not a rift in the clouds, but the white crest of an enormous wave. There's no doubt that this wave would have been a very fearful and terrifying moment for Shackleton. And we know that in Grandad's later years, he had a great fear of death. But as we know, Shackleton made it to South Georgia. And I'm pretty confident that Grandad has ridden the crest of the wave and made it to his South Georgia.
This is Sea Fever by John Masefield. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by, and a wheel's kick and the wind's song and the white sails shaking, and the grey mist on the sea's face and the grey dawn breaking. I must go down to the seas again, to the call of the running tide. It's a wild call and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day and the white clouds flying, and the flung spray and the blown spume and the seagulls crying. I must go down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way, where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover, and a quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trick's over. I always remember a couple of years ago, Grandad having, I think the word is a debate with the minister for the We Free Church. And one of the most pressing questions he had was about the application process to become a ghost. So I like to think this application process has succeeded, and that every time any of us hear that little "go for it, do it" voice in your head, that's Grandad telling us that mischief has to continue and should always be there.
So I've got a wee piece from Robert Louis Stevenson on the poem of the Skyboat Song, which I've recently been told is actually now the theme tune to Outlander, so I discovered this afterwards. But, sing me a song of a lad that is gone, say could that lad be I. Merry of soul, he sailed in a day, over the sea to Skye. Mull was astern, rum at the port, egg on the starboard bow. Glory of youth glowed in his soul. Where is that glory now? Sing me a song of a lad that is gone, say could that lad be I. Merry of soul, he sailed in a day, over the sea to Skye. Give me again all that was there. Give me the sun that shone. Give me the eyes, give me the soul. Give me that lad that's gone. Sing me a song of a lad that is gone. Say could that lad be I. Merry of soul, he sailed on a day, over the sea to Skye. Billow and breeze, island and seas, mountains, rain and the sun. All that was good, all that was fair, all that was me is gone. Now I remember I did sort of look at this poem and think it was fairly sad at first, but it's mostly posing a question of where is glory now, and I had a wee think on that and actually looked around, and you can see Grandad in all of us, from phrases, all of which are written on the back of the sheet, and the little stories that we all tell, some of which were told today, and then some which we can't hear just yet because we wish we could have more people here, but you can know they're being told behind the scenes and everyone at home. But I have many memories of Grandad, all of them fond. Most of them have already been alluded to in some capacity, and more will be said to come. But I most sort of vividly remember him by one of Alistair's cartoons, which sits by our fireplace with a wonderful wee poem, which I always like to think is the image of Grandad at his most content when he's sat back at the end of the day. And it goes like this. Oh, that the peats would cut themselves, and the fishes leap onto the shore, and I would sit by the fireside and sleep forevermore.
If you were to ask me of my grandfather, how would I explain? The life of a bull terrier free from his chain. The wildness of an outlaw, refusing to be tame, and the heart of a man kindled in flame. Well, he taught me how to parachute roll at the age of 85, and his sense of fun and laughter kept us all alive. His strength of character could not be tamed, and no scandalous act could ever be shamed. The depth of his character held no end, and to all he met, he was simply a friend. One time I found him with my friend Fred, blowing up condoms and resting them on his head. His mischief traveled far and wide, from the Outer Hebrides to the River Clyde. He had incredible skill at connecting to the young and turning any situation into bucket loads of fun. Even at Christmas, he was never disdaining, eating chocolate willies just to be entertaining. And so I would think, is this a normal grandfather or some strange, dangerous, evil, wicked master? But then he would catch me again with his audacious stare, and I'd be back in his trap, free from a care. But above all else that I admire you for, it was finding humor when death was knocking at your door. It was summoning strength when your days were no more, and looking for the future when all else would ask what for. So farewell, my friend. Thank you for all the fun. I'm so very proud to be your grandson.
Made me cry before I even start. An honest man, here lies at rest, as ever God, with his image blessed. The friend of man, the friend of truth, the friend of age and guide of youth. Few hearts like his with virtue warmed, few heads with knowledge so informed. If there is another world, he lives in bliss. If there is none, he made the best of this.
So I thought I needed to thank Grandad, particularly when I was at Edinburgh, hosting me and making me have every friend I probably ever made. Particularly me and Alexander MacDonald used to take groups up. I think we did about 6 or 8, and I counted 75 of my friends that I've had to stay at Grandad's house. There are no other 90-year-olds that I could say that have hosted 30, 21-year-olds till 7 a.m. in the morning, squashing them into his Bentley, taking us on walks, dancing, and completely with us as just as much part of the team, never afraid of being the older one. And that's something that I hope we can all follow him in. But I guess what I really want you to know is that we're never going to let you go. Even if we wanted to, we can find you everywhere. As I drove up to Skye last night, you were in the powerful mountain tops, full of snow. I found your naughty little twinkling eyes sparkling in the salt water, catching the moonlight. You were in the blast of wild fresh air as we got the hell out of London. You're in the first sights of heather on the horizon. You're in the smell of chestnuts on the stove. You're in my cuts and bruises, character-building tumbles, and my determination to not complain about my painful blisters that are burning in my shoesies. You're in the peaty water, whether we're swimming or drinking. You were even in the toothless lorry driver that swore at us as we went by. You were in Eliza's speedy driving, racing people round the bend. You're in Alexander's terrible-looking black eye. You're in my careful packing, folding to get everything just right. You were in Alistair's bear hug when we got here last night. You were in Geordie's, "Don't spill gravy on my shirt, Mari," as he hugged me hello. You're in Gilas's bravery every day we go. You're in Dad's witty remarks that keep us all laughing no matter what pain comes or goes. You were in Jeannie's golden aura radiating as we arrived here. You'll be in the brawling children's screams that we will return to. You're in the ice-pick crackers of the lobsters we're going to eat tonight. You're in the tumbler glass that Mungo's going to give us to get through it. You're in the Highland music that we're going to hear. You're in the fact I wrote this on the way here. You're in my tartan sash that I'm wearing right now. I know now you're drinking whiskey in the stars, but until then, I'll find you in the earth, the land, the sea, the sky, and our hearts and souls lifted high. I promise it won't change no matter how much I cry. So save a seat for us at your table, and we will follow you when we're able.
We will now hear from Iona, who, as you know, cannot be here with us today, but has recorded something earlier for us.
I've been sitting here all day, drinking Talisker or Torah bag, you might be thinking. No, it just was grouse for him, and perhaps a lunchtime gin, but generally not before 6. Eating oysters in the back of your Bentley, turning partners at the balls gently. +4s on the slopes, sugar plump on the rope, stories through which you'll live on. Grandad, you were splendid, that's what we all thought of you. Now that your tenure's ended, we'll lord all your adventures anew. Grandad never ever was boring, famous for his wind farm and snoring. Lots of ventures and ideas, a failure he never had a fear. What a wonderful way to live life. Catching mackerel off your boat for breakfast, skiing in the Dolomites, the fun was endless. Skinny dipping in the fairy pools, encouraging us to break the rules. You were larger than life in all ways. Grandad, Grandad, splendid, that's what we all thought of you. And now that your tenure has ended, it won't be the same without you. I'm trying to record this at the beach at 7 o'clock at night whilst parenting at the same time. But it's a particularly wonderful spot called Curio Bay. And Grandad came to visit us here and had the most wonderful time. And I've got a lovely picture of him sitting in a house that's just down the beach there. Grandad was just wonderful and terrible and naughty. It was very difficult being his favourite sometimes because other members of the family would coerce me into telling him off for the various bad things he'd done and try and get Ed to behave himself. But he will be sorely missed. I hope you will have the chance to celebrate him, but let's have a proper party when this is all over and we can travel again, and we'll have a proper party to celebrate Grandad because he really was one in a million. Lots of love.
Your own special thoughts and memories of Rory. Most families have a favourite song, piece of music that they like to sing or listen to at family gatherings. And the Hilleary clan, it was the MacLean. So let's now listen to the MacLean. And those of you that can, as Duncan mentioned earlier, at home and watching this, please join in with all your heart. Really loud, as Duncan says.
Wail loudly, women, your coronach doleful, lamenting ye pipers, tread solemn and slow, mow down like a flower is the chief of a gower, and the hearts of the clansmen are weary with woe. In peacetime he ruled like a father amongst us, unconquered in fight was the blade that he bore, but the chase was the glory and pride of his manhood, strong dog of the hunter, Magian Moor. Low down by yon burn that's half hidden with heather, he lurked like a lion in the lair he knew well. 'Twas there sobbed the red deer to feel his keen dagger, there pierced by his arrow the Cayley cock fell. How oft when at even he'd watch for the wildfowl, like lightning his coracle sped from the shore, but still and for aye as we crossed the lone Lochen is dawn of the hunter, Magian Moor. Once more let his war cry resound in the mountains, MacDonald shall hear it in Irrigan-Co. Its echoes shall float o'er the brazen Lochaber till Stuart shall know, and born to the waters beyond the Loch Linney, twixt Morven and Mull where the tide eddies roar. Magillian shall hear it and mourn for their kinsman, for Donald the hunter, Magillian more. Then here let him rest in the lap of Scudonald, the wind for his watcher, the mist for his shroud, where the green and the grey moss will weave their wild tartans, a covering meet for a chieftain so proud. For as free as the eagle these rocks were his eyrie, and free as the eagle his spirit shall soar, o'er the crags and the corries that erst knew the footfall of Donald the hunter, Magillian more.
Wonderful. Just a wee reminder. Well, how do I follow that? The prophet Al-Mustafa was preparing to leave a place that had been home for many years. The people of the city were grieved at his leaving. He spoke with a large crowd before departing. He could see their sadness, and he said to them, "This would I have you remember in remembering me. That which seems most feeble and bewildered in you is the strongest and most determined. It is not the breath that has erected and hardened the structure of your bones. And is it not the dream, which none of you remember having dreamt, that builded your city and fashioned all there is in it? Could you but see the tides of the breath, you would cease to see all else. And if you could hear the whispering of the dream, you would hear no other sound." He then goes on to say, "Patient over patient is the captain of my ship. The wind blows and restless are the sails. Even the rudder begs direction. Yet quietly my captain awaits in silence. And these my mariners, who have heard the choir of the greater sea, they too have heard me patiently. Now they shall wait no longer. I am ready. The stream has reached the sea, and once more the great mother holds her son against her breast. Fare you well." We are all concerned, directly or indirectly, with the death of any individual, for we are all members of one human community. Though some of the links between us are strong and some are tenuous, each of us is joined to all others by links of kinship, love, or friendship, by living in the same community, town, or country, or simply by our own common humanity. The uniqueness of each human life is the basis of our grief in bereavement. You can look through the whole world and there will be no one like Rory. He still lives on in your memories, and though no longer a visible part of your lives, he will always remain a member of your family, of your circle, through the influence he has had on you and the special part he has played in your lives. When you leave here in a short while, I hope, like me, you will leave with a feeling of having shared something special for a very special gentleman. And remember, even though the body dies, the spirit does live on, and the moments of shared love are eternal and can never fade. And one last quote from David Attenborough. It seems to me that the natural world is the greatest source of excitement, the greatest source of visual beauty, the greatest source of intellectual interest. It is the greatest source of so much in life that makes life worth living. At every funeral, we are reminded of our own mortality and of others close to us who have died, and we share the intensity of our common humanity. Those people who have been a strength and inspiration and good company, and who have enriched our lives by giving love and friendship, and who have derived mutual fulfillment from this. These are the people who give meaning to life. People like Phil, who dedicated the past year looking after and keeping Rory company. The community nurses, the home care team who looked after him so well. Because without people like these in our communities, it is not possible for us and to have our loved ones at home at such an important time. And it is their dedication to Rory that made this possible. He had a rich, full life, as you know, and he was loved by you all. His influences will live on in unending consequences that will flow from his happy life and the wonderful, warm character that he was. It is you now that will carry on his memories, the memories of his smile, his laughter, and the good times together, his kindness and his generosity. It is in those memories, in the myriad of influences and impressions, and in the genes and character traits of our successors that gives us a sense of continuity. So, farewell to the mountains high covered with snow, farewell to the straths and the green valleys below, farewell to the forests and wild hanging woods, farewell to the torrents and the loud pouring floods. My heart's in the highlands, my heart's not here. My heart's in the highlands, chasing the deer, chasing the wild deer and following the roe. My heart's in the highlands, wherever I go. So we're coming to the close of this part of the service, so I will just say a prayer. So if you please. Heavenly Father, thank you for the gift of this earthly life. We thank you for the life of our brother, for the years you gave him and the character that you shaped in them. We thank you for their life, for every memory of love and joy, for every good deed and every sorrow shared with us. We thank you for the rest in Christ he now enjoys, and we thank you for giving him to us for a time. And we praise you for the glory we shall share together for eternity. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. I'm now going to pass over to Shona, who will sing Psalm 23 in Gaelic for us.
Live the ushkachan kunya, trori hiemi, Beoich I manam, traurig I mi. Sliane feeding skanam hing. Sliane feeding skanam hing. Shag getami shul, troglaun skalvash. Chanil gorum rol god hausam maladium. Dolach tagas dolrug vedat kortoch go. Jesse you to board from hoed aunam fihan ishmonaichen. Gungule olomochaun, hamochuch bakud hadish. Gukinchach leni mahas agas troched mi, ula layan mover, agas ni mi koni fas molayan. Aunentai sonaros and cheerla.
Thank you, Shona. May the roads rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall softly upon the fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. So we've now come to the end of this part of the service. And very soon we will be making our way to Edinburgh, to Ruaraidh's final resting place. So if we could all please be upstanding.